introduction. At the Italian Ministry of Health, I'm a member of the EU-Africa PerMed Consortium. On behalf of both, I would like to thank you for attending to this 7th webinar regarding the role of the patient engagement in personal medicine research under Europe and Africa landscape. The webinar is recorded. If you don't wish to have your image appear, please make sure to turn off the camera before joining the meeting. Please mute from the start at the beginning unless you are invited to speak. And during the webinar, please don't hesitate to use the chat to submit your questions, indicating the name of the speaker. During the question section, please raise your hand to request to speak, and please mute again yourself after speaking. At the end of the webinar, participants will be requested to fill out an online questionnaire at this link to express your opinion and to receive your certificate of attendance. This is the agenda for today. I tried to do a brief introduction and the presentation of the speakers and the introduction of the lesson learned during ERA PerMed initiative about patient engagement on the research, and then it will be the floor of our speakers. Please join me in welcoming our guest speakers. It's my pleasure to introduce you from Inspire2 Life organization. We have on board two speakers, Eltjo Heddema, that is patient advocate, also Mtei, also patient advocate. Inspire2 Life is a platform of patient advocates started the connection with expert patients, cancer survivors, caregivers, and also doctors and scientists to find the optimal approach to serve the best interests of the patient. We have also on board Sonia Abdelhak, that is member of the PerMedina project. PerMedina is an ambitious project to deploy personal medicine in the Maghreb. Is funded by the Solidarity Fund for Innovative Projects of the French Ministry of Europe and Foreign Affairs, and is coordinated by the Institut Pasteur in Tunis with the support of the Institut Pasteur in Paris. Helena Harnik, that is from the program From Testing to Targeted Treatments program, that is a global multi-stakeholder collaborative program that aims to improve patient outcomes by improving access to personal medicine for all patients. And finally, Elsie that is the ambassador project manager for AFH Europe Foundation. That is a network that is actively working to improve European-wide awareness, understanding, and access to diagnosis and treatment in inherited lipid conditions, so that all those patients receive optimal treatment and support. Thank you to all of you for being here. And now let me start with a short introduction of the EU-Africa PerMed. This is a coordination of support action focused on personal medicine and a use of based in this concept. Personal medicine as a medical model using characterization of individual phenotypes and genotypes, not only with the molecular profiling, but also including medical imaging and lifestyle data, for tailoring the right therapeutic strategy for the right person at the right time, and to determine the predisposition to disease and or to deliver timely and targeted prevention. You can see in this slide our consortium that include partners from Europe and Africa with different type of institutions, from SMA as Innovatec, that is a coordinator located in Spain, and also from, for example, the Italian Ministry of Health, that is a policy and research funding organization, but we have on board also research infrastructure, research organizations, and a policymaker for both regions. You can see and read all about our partners and our webpage that I invite you to take a look. Our main idea was to integrate the African countries in the international consortium of personal medicine, and in this way contribute to a successful implementation of the personal medicine in the global context. We have in this project several objectives that I also invited you to check, and all the reports and very interesting deliverables that are included in our website. And the objectives that is linked to this webinar is the objective 5, to carry out capacity building and training activities addressing relevant personal medicine issues for Africa. We have 3 main points, that is the education and training activities for supporting the translation, the research in the practice, to disseminate good practice examples in relation to the implementation and for the harmonization of the personal medicine practice and research, and to facilitate the regional European and Africa research networks for future projects of research. We have elaborated several questionnaires and surveys during the life of this project, and you can see here the main pillars regarding the tools of personal medicine that are needed to implement this approach, the communication and patient engagement, the different diseases that are priority on personal medicine at the moment in Africa, and the pillars of prevention, diagnosis of treatments. We have already organized several webinars in oncology, in ethics and regulation, and implementation and implementation of personal medicine approach, the gap, the challenge, the opportunities, the health technology assessment related to personal medicine tools, the opportunities and gaps in the context of Kenyan scientific platform, and the capacities training for research implementation of personal medicine. You can see in this slide an example of how we are already built a substantial scientific community that are actively participated in our different training activities. This is an example of our webinar in June about health technology assessment. And we have also organized a training interactive event with hybrid format in Cape Town in South Africa, who was focused on the standards of personal medicine research. And we are organizing our next training, big training event also in an hybrid format about implementation of personal medicine approach in Kenya next year. Of course, we need your collaboration to continue to follow up these initiatives regarding the identification of priorities, the identification of experts, for promoting our training informative sessions, and also for evaluating us, because we need to improve in our further activities. So I invite you to fill up the survey after the webinar. Just to work regarding patient engagement, we are here speaking about involve patient as patient partner in the co-realization of health research across all the research cycles of the studies. We are speaking about patient as any person with past or present experience on health issues, personally or as a caregiver. As you know, nowadays there are very literature articles and guidelines that are showing are discussing evaluating the impact of the patient engagement in the research process. But here in this webinar, we would like to provide you a glimpse into the practical aspect of personal engagement through real-world examples and the insight of the distinguished speakers that we have joined us. Just to see you a landscape, to show you a landscape of the landscape of personal medicine under the umbrella of the internal consortium of personal medicine. We have several coordination and support actions as this with Africa, but we have also an initiative regarding funding research. And all these initiatives will continue in the European Partnership for Personal Medicine. That is the new project that will be started at the end of the year. What is the thing that we have learned as a funding agency about patient engagement? We have been working during around 5 years in this initiative to fund projects and international level. You have done step by step, starting with evaluation pilot study, including patient and reviewers to select the projects for funding. We have included patients in the midterm evaluation of the projects. And we have also included the patient as members of the advisory board for the annual calls to select the priorities for the funding activities. We have encouraged the active involvement of the patient at the research projects, including some points and evaluation criteria, inviting to include the detailed description of how they want to involve patients in their projects. And also we have established several connections with my funders of my patient organization. We are organizing a kind of guidelines for the next initiative of funding projects. And we have based in mapping and connection that we have already established, and also in the key point that we have identified with the researchers. We have understand that it's difficult to identify the appropriate partner for the research. You know that the personal medicine is a very broad field. We have also find that some researchers have difficulty to understand what can be the level of the scientific knowledge of the patient, what can be the scope to include the patient in some kind of projects. Not all the studies on personal medicine have the same level. There are included preclinical and also clinical studies. They have also difficulty to dedicate time, human and economic resources. And it's difficult also to perceive the evidence of the add value to include patient in the research. Of course, there are all step-by-step recommendation that is needed to include the patient. Also, the issue of the economic compensation, of course. And we are learning their experience and expertise. This is the most important point. We have organized at in March of this year a panel of discussion during the evaluation of the final projects of ERA PERMED. And this panel includes how to involve patients in personal medicine research. I have picked up the conclusion that can be seen under the perspective of the funding organization. The importance that the perspective of the need of the patient has to be included in the research process. That the idea that the funding organization play a significant role providing resources and guidelines for this engagement. And obviously that the ideal situation would be the adoption of a common strategy of all the funding agencies that are involved in a research project. Some suggestions that can be adopted is encourage the partnership between research and patient to stimulate this co-work, some requirement, but as I said you before, not in all projects is possible. Some requirements regarding the patient engagement and condition of funding. Encourage and prioritize the patient-centered research. Provide and support the training and education, not only for patients, but also for researchers. And of course, develop guidelines, standards for the patient engagement. That is something that is already ongoing from different initiatives, not only for personal medicine. And of course, funding agencies can allocate specific funds for patient engagement in all the joint call process, but also for support patient engagement activities into the project as co-investigator. As you see, we have a very great expectation addressing the role of the patient in the personal medicine research under the vision of the funding agency. But now, I want to give the floor to our speakers. And the first is Sonia Abdelhak. Sonia, the floor is you.
Thank you so much. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. I'm really happy to see you. Let me just first share my screen. Okay. Hello again. Thank you so much for inviting me and my team to share with you our experience in terms of patients' engagement. So, you know, when I see in the title that you have put empowerment of patients, actually it's the other way around. Patients are empowering us, and as researchers, they are really giving us the strength in order to continue research in this field, the field of precision medicine, despite all the challenges that we might encounter in our work. So I would like to start sharing a personal experience. These ladies, they are mothers of children who suffer from spinal muscular atrophy. It's a severe life-threatening disease, extremely rare, neuromuscular disease. And one of my colleagues, she put me in contact with them 2 years ago. She knew that I have been working 30 years ago on the identification of the gene of spinal muscular atrophy, and that I have been working on rare diseases for the last 30 years. She knew also that besides being a researcher, I'm also an active civil society member, and we have created an NGO 10 years ago. And in addition to our research activity, we are very active in collaborations with civil society organizations. So by discussing with these ladies 2 years ago, they were willing to create an association, and they had a lot of difficulties in finding a way to provide diagnosis for their children, to have accurate diagnosis in order to know what type of mutations they have, in order to know what to expect from the disease severity. They wanted to know and to give access to their children to innovative therapy. So they knew about all the innovative therapies that were available all around the world. They were really extremely active in looking for information. And by discussing with them, it was really very, very enriching. And they were able to teach us what are the strengths and the limits and the weaknesses of our health system, and what is our preparedness for precision medicine, actually. In a very rapid time, they have created the association. They have organized at least 3 events in order to raise awareness about the disease. They organized several meetings with various stakeholders in order to advocate about access to diagnosis, access to therapy, and they were asking to have clear path for diagnosis and care for their children. Several among their questions, they were really very inspiring and orientating what should be the priorities in terms of research in order to help them and to find solutions for their children. So unfortunately, we don't have registries for several diseases, in particular for rare diseases. There are for sure some, but not for all the diseases, in particular for SMA. And actually, they were willing really to find solutions, immediate solutions for helping other families, help identify, actually, if we translate they are willing, you could translate them into concrete research questions about the epidemiology of the disease, about how many families are affected, what type of disease was there, what are their needs. So they were really highly, highly inspiring for research action activities. So what we have to know about civil societies in Tunisia, it's since the revolution in 2011, there are more than 11,000 civil society organizations. They are not all patient support groups. Most of them are working on governance aspects, on protecting minorities, and there are several patient support groups actually. And there is a very good platform which is trying to help all these NGOs to achieve their activities. And what we need to know about the situation, the health system in Tunisia. So we are a relatively small country, just with 12 million people. We have quite a very good health system, but as you see in this picture, most of the hospitals are on the coastal areas, and so the needs in other regions, even if there is a lot of effort which is being conducted by the government, it's thanks to CSOs, civil society organizations, that there is a very good health coverage, in particular with primary healthcare centers. But there is also the needs of support from citizens in order to ensure good health. Regarding research, so for the last years, we have had the chance through either investment from the government or investment through international cooperation to have strengthening and capacity building around genomics and precision medicine. And as said already by Maria Jose, I'm member of PERMEDINA. I'm happy that among the participants, there are some of our collaborators from Institut Pasteur in Morocco, Institut Pasteur in Algeria, Institut Pasteur in Tunis, and others from France. We are really happy to collaborate with the EU Africa PERMED, and it's a pleasure to build together, build bridges and exchange experiences. So in the frame of PERMEDINA, we have tried to identify what are the patient support groups, what are their characteristics, what are their needs, and we have focused on patient support groups who are involved in cancer. Actually, we have identified more than 10 NGOs. Part of them are chaired by patients and families, family members, and others actually they are chaired by health professionals, in particular clinicians. There are also other more general associations who are helping, in particular with activity of education, science, education, and in particular in genomic literacy. I will show you some pictures later on. So one of the most active associations in the field of cancer is this association, which is chaired by Mrs. Rauda Zarrouk. We conducted in the frame of PERMEDINA several interviews with patient support groups, and by discussing with these and by observing what are the types of activity they are conducting, so they are able to, in addition to help patients with financial support, with having help during their care, they help to advocate and to bring access to the patients to information. So they want to have access to the information. They want to know more about This was also the case with the ladies from the patient support groups. So they want to know more about clinical trials. They want to know more about what are the benefits, what are the risks. They're really able and they are willing to share information with the researchers, but they want to know more about risks, benefits, about that. what we have to know also is that actually in each patient support group association, you will find highly committed people who are trying to bring on board in this picture. You find clinicians from various expertise. You find decision makers like here, Professor Mariam Khrouf, who is the director of research in the Ministry of Health. They bring pharma companies, they bring health professionals, they bring them training, and they try to help in order to, they're really change makers and try to make things happen. So I wanted to share with you, if I still have few minutes, rapidly about this European project in which we have learned a lot about science and society interactions. And it's called Ingenious Science Shops to Promote Participatory Innovation, Research and Equity in Science. This project has been, is coordinated by our colleagues from Spain, Maria Jesus, and in Tunisia, it is coordinated by Hisham Ben Hassin. So the platform, the Science Shop, it's a project, it's a platform which brings the social needs, and it links between NGOs, civil society organizations, and the scientists. And they try to reformulate the social need into a concrete question. Here you have a picture of a reformulation session between people from civil society organizations and from various disciplines, from medical genetics, ENT, researchers, and representatives from an association working on hearing impairment in children. And they try to find a solution for rapid screening of hearing impairment in children who are at age of going to school. So you translate the research need, the social need into a concrete research project and try to find solutions using research. So the Science Shop of Institut Pasteur in Tunis, it has been created in the frame of this project, and it is called Science Together. Sorry. So I want just to show you a picture of, so this Atif is a chair of an association which is very active into science education for children with hearing impairment. You see here members of the lab, those who are working, Marwa working on breast cancer, Hanza working on diabetes, Rahma working on hearing impairment. So it was the first time that children came to this city of science, and they raised awareness about Atif. He raised awareness about the necessity of educating children with hearing impairment in order to be more aware of precision medicine and genomics for auditory health. So in 2018, we have inaugurated the DNA Learning Center in the City of Science in Tunis. And we try in the frame of several projects in order to make some experiments to show concretely to patients and their families how the studies, genomic studies are conducted. So what we learned from all these projects that we need openness through all the stages of the research cycle. This slide, it has been presented by our colleagues from Inspire project about how to open all the steps, as I have said, by engaging the society, by giving access to data, by being involved from the beginning in the science, in setting up the research projects. So I would like to thank you again, and I hope that I have partly answered to your question, and I will be very happy to share more during the discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sonia. If I can say you a question, You are the head of research of the Laboratory on Biomedical Genomics and Oncogenetics, a member of the Communication, Science and Society Support Unit at Institut Pasteur of the Tunis. But in your opinion, taking your experience also in research, how can we ensure that the personal medicine research is inclusive or will be inclusive and takes into account the different or the diverse patient population that we have in every country?
Okay, thank you so much, Maria Jose. You know, when I was trying to think of sharing the experience and what would be the key elements, I recall that I have had part of my training in Europe, and also when I was a young researcher in Tunisia. Usually what happens if you stay in the lab, if you stay in the ivory tower, you will not realize how much it is important and how much knowledge you could have by going to the field, by going to the families, I mean, it's very, very important to go to other spaces than the spaces where we are used to go. So, and the other thing is that in order to be really, to bring patients and patient supporting groups on board, you have to forget that you know. You have to be in the state of mind that you listen to the patients, their needs, and we learn a lot from the patients. We learn a lot from the caregivers. We learn a lot from the health professionals. You know, so for me, there are several spaces of learning. We need to be aware of that, and we just need to build trust. Trust is very, very important, and sharing information at all the steps is really very important.
Thank you very much, Sonia. We have a question in the chat. Just a moment. Is from Christopher Bendana. The question is, how do patients with limited scientific knowledge understand the weakness in a research program?
Yeah, it's a very relevant question. Actually, you know, the literacy level between the various patients, so you need to know that there are patients who even if they have low education level, they try to look for the information. You know, they feel responsible, for example, for the decisions for their children in order to give the consent. So actually, it's a matter of you know, light and dark. By the questions they raise, if you look very carefully to the question, you will see that there is something missing, and that's how you identify what are the weaknesses of the system. You know, these ladies, they wanted to know about where to conduct awareness campaigns or training. You know, that their children, they need occupational therapy, they need several multidisciplinary care. So they wanted to know where to do the actions. They asked, what are the figures? Where are the families located geographically? We were unable to answer. So sometimes it's through these questions that you understand that there is something missing. Thanks.
Thank you. One more question is from Emmanuel Ochola from the Lacor Hospital in Uganda. And I think the question is how different is the patient engagement in the research process from the community advisory boards, if I understand well the question.
I'm trying to check the question. So it's about community health workers Okay. Actually, as I showed previously, there are some of the civil society organizations that they have been set by health workers. Actually, they are the voice of those who have no voice. So they try to put their expertise as health workers to convey the messages from the community. I don't know if I have answered. Thanks. I see that there is a comment about patients are experts. Yeah, sure. They are experts. Actually, they know more about the natural history of their disease. You know, in particular for rare diseases, maybe you could think that rare diseases are particular, but if we want to talk about personalized medicine or precision medicine, actually each patient has its own specificities.
Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you so much.
There is a question also for yours, and I think it's a question for you, for Erika. How Per-Medina and EU Africa Per-Med can join their efforts to raise more awareness on personal medicine in northern and sub-Saharan regions in Africa?
We will need to have training activities which are oriented to patients. Actually, patients want to know, they want really to know about how is conducted the science, how are conducted the clinical trials, how are conducted the clinical therapies. So they need to know. So we need to create a space to exchange, to have dialogue with them. And as I said, we really need to be aware that it's not someone who knows and someone who don't know. No, every one of us has his own experience, either as a researcher, as a clinician, or as a patient. And we are there to exchange knowledge between us, to listen to each other and learn from each other. So there is someone who asked if I could share. I have already shared the presentation with the organizers, so please, I have asked the permission from all the people who are here with their pictures, but as there is no text, I think you have access to the recording. I prefer not to share the pictures, but they are all available on social media. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Yes, the registration will be available in the website of the projects. Thank you very much. And now is the floor of Eltjo Heddema.
Okay, thank you. Yes. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for inviting me to be here. I did not prepare any sheets because personally my experience is bandwidth is very much a problem usually. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about my background, Inspired to Live, the patient advocacy organization, and a bit more about a project projects that we are initiating in lower middle income countries, amongst them Kenya. But I will tell a bit more about that. I'm based in Amsterdam, the Netherlands, and I became involved with Inspire to Live, which is an international patient advocacy organization. A couple of years ago, when my wife was diagnosed with cancer, in the process, we realized that although pretty good knowledge, we had a lot of friends in the medical organizations, doctors, that kind of stuff. It's really hard to get the right knowledge available to you. It's also not also very easy to talk to doctors when they only have 10 minutes time. well, in her case, she had this very rare type of cancer, which made the whole process even more complicated. So that's well, kind of my personal experience, and then we got in touch with Inspire to Live, which is patient advocacy for cancer patients, and they really helped us. And since then, I became more and more active with them. I'm not sure whether you're familiar with Inspire to Live, but Franklin will probably also tell a bit about it later on. But it started in the Netherlands, and by now I think we have patient advocates in approximately 40 countries all over the world. And I think the great thing about this is that we can really share knowledge, hear what works in one country, one area, can be used somewhere else, share ideas, sometimes even motivate each other, because it's not always easy work. And the underlying premise is really that is quite a lot of knowledge and treatments or diagnostics or whatever available, but it's not always available to the patient. So really making sure we share the knowledge, and this knowledge is used where it's really needed. That's our objective. We have a monthly virtual meeting we call it the World Campus, where all patient advocates join, discuss different topics, and once a year we have a physical meeting in Amsterdam. But what I really want to tell you a bit more about is one of the projects that we are doing, because we realized that sharing knowledge was great and it really helps, but sometimes we think we need to do more to make sure that what's available actually becomes available for the patient. And basically that thoughts led us to starting projects, and then one of the projects that we are working on is making a multi-cancer early detection or early diagnosis available, basically to everybody, but especially in lower and middle income countries. You may have read about all kinds of products that do cancer detection based on blood sample, and they're using pretty advanced genetic sequencing techniques, and these products are great. Still in research or development, but they promise really a lot. The problem, it's one of the problems of these products, is that they require pretty advanced infrastructure and they're expensive. So basically, they are being developed for the high-income world, and making them available to lower middle-income countries will be in the far future. What we're trying to do, and we work with a Chinese-American company, which actually basically does the same, but doesn't require any expensive infrastructure, but leverages common lab technology and then some AI software which runs in the cloud. And we think this can really help in countries where diagnosis takes a lot of time. And it's all great, I think, to have these ideas when you live in Amsterdam. But the real problem that's not a problem, sorry. But it only works if the people who live in these countries really also say that they really want this to be available. And that's one of the places where the patient advocates from these countries come in, like Franklin or our patient advocates in Kenya, who told us, this is a real great product and can you help us make it available here? And then actually we're now working on a project in Kenya for a first implementation to really show the benefits. And it's really the local patient advocates that make this possible and help this make possible, because we have to convince governments, have to convince NGOs to or whoever to provide money, because starting with this we need funding, and it's the local patient advocates that can really help us tell what's a good way to do this, how to set this up, to really challenge our thinking and logic and make sure we are addressing real problems and not imagined problems. Yeah, that's what we're doing. It's really great to work with people all over the world and see how we can get this forward. It's challenging. There's a lot of challenges here, even though our solution is low cost. It's still relatively no, let me put it different. The cost could be much lower if the infrastructure cost in these countries could also be lower, but these costs are pretty high because the volumes are not that high. So there's almost like a catch-22 in this. But that's the kind of stuff that we're trying to challenge and change. It's slow going, but we're making progress. And I think what we are looking for is also to get feedback from patient advocates from countries saying, hey, this is something that could work for us. Discuss how we can maybe set up a project, and yeah, that's what we're working on. So I'm in the meantime looking at the chat to see if there are any questions. But this is all about the previous presentation, and to maybe to come back to something Sonia said. I think what is also very good is the kind of diversity we get into the discussions, because there's different people as patient advocates. There's doctors, there's patients, caretakers, but there's also the whole different backgrounds. For instance, myself, I'm an economist. I don't know much about medicine, but I look, getting all these perspectives together is really making sure that we get a better solution and a better product, a better product to the patient. Yeah, that's in short what I wanted to share with you, and I'm wondering if there are any questions.
Thank you very much, Eltjo. Your background as economist, I think this is also an important background for personal medicine, to demonstrate the evidence of the importance of the patient engagement on the research, because it's one of the most important points, to demonstrate to the funding agencies, to the health system, that they can save money with the implementation of the personal medicine. I would like to ask you a question, because your organization, your platform, I see that there are members for nearly all the countries around the world, with very different personal background, very different illness, and also with a very different healthcare system in their country, or the research support. It's curious, how are you working to establish a common line of priorities with all these diverse members?
Yeah, well, I think in the end, our common cause or goal is the same, getting the best for patients. And of course, what we can do, well, in for instance, the Netherlands is much different from what's possible in Argentina or Nigeria, but still, sharing the experience, being able to ask a question and get different answers, maybe answers or things you haven't even never thought of, is what really helps. So there's no standardized approach. It's actually very diverse, but it's the common cause, I would say, that really unites us. And it's actually this well, I would call it out of the box thinking, out of the local context thinking, that is really very good, and nice things come out of it. For instance, we helped set up a cancer registry in Armenia, based on experiences in European countries. I was working on a project proposal, and then a doctor from Argentina was, looking at it and said, "Oh, but think about this or think about that." So it's really, I think, the diversity, which is our what we call also one of our powers. So yeah, I think that answers your question, I hope. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. I think we have a question from Agustin Chinelo.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for organizing this program. I have always known that in research involving patients, there has been informed consent. Mm-hmm. In the informed consent form, patients are made to know the purpose for the research. Patients are described the methodology for the research. Patients are ensured that they are free to disengage in the research, and it will not affect their care. I am trying to pick extra things in empowering these patients in this workshop. So that's actually what is there much different from the informed consent they receive, from the feedback we get from them on their lifestyle, on their biometric information, their occupation relating to the research. Apart from this, I
think we lost
power in this program. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I think I definitely missed the last part of your question. I'm sorry about that. It was, I think, a kind of audio problem. But and I'm not sure I got your complete question. But yeah, informed consent, of course, is key to everything, and we need to do that. So, but I'm not really sure.
Hello.
Yeah.
I am saying,
yeah,
in my area in Nigeria, once we are doing anything hospital-based research involving patients, we have always included informed consent. In the informed consent, you describe the purpose of the research, what the patient will get, what the research will be able to contribute to the patient and to the community, and so other things. And the patient is assured that he or she can walk out of the research anytime she desired, and there wouldn't be any problem. So I am trying to get a different other way, or an advanced way of getting patient empowered in the involvement of clinical research. Thank you.
Thank you. Sonia, do you want to ask something?
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you very much, Eltjo, for sharing your experience, and thanks, Augustine, for the question. If I could share my experience and link with what I have said previously. I talked about dialogue, and I think it takes a lot of time. It depends on the type of project, but as the PI of a project, you have to have your office door always open. open for the patients who ask for questions. You have to give your phone number. That this is actually, it is a request from our IRB to be always accessible for the study participants. Several years ago, when I first started setting up benches for molecular investigation of genetic diseases, actually we spend at least 2 hours, because we are in a culture, an oral culture. So even if you write the information sheet, the protocol, the letter of consent, you have to take time to explain to the patients or to the family about the study, to have their question. It's not you provide them with the sheet of paper and you let them alone with that information. You have to be open to their questions. And usually what happens is that when we explain that, for example, for genetic analysis, we might not give or we might not have a result. And we explain that it takes time. At least at that time, it used to take us at least 3 or 4 months before having a result. And what happens sometimes is that people, they come back 1 week later, 2 weeks later, and they say, do you have something new? You know, people, they want to have hope. They want to learn. I know that it takes time. I know that it takes energy, but if we don't put it, we cannot do personalized medicine. We cannot do research. Thank you. I don't know if I have partly answered to your question. Thanks.
Thank you. I thank you so much. I've learned from that. At least opening door, not just a one-time questionnaire filling, a one-time approach. Thank you. There are some new contributions I've got from this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think we need to give the floor to our next speaker, that is Elsie Evans, that is the ambassador of the project of AFH and European Function. Elsie, the floor is yours.
Had a question.
We can give a second round of question after this speech. Thank you.
Okay, I'm hoping you can see my PowerPoint at the moment.
Yes.
You can. Oh, it's just
now,
disappeared. No, that's
Yeah.
fine. It's just disappeared on me. I apologize. I will try and make it a little bit quick. So my perspective is going to be from a patient point of view. So as you can see on my first slide, family and faith has always been my pillar, and it's trying to explain where we came from and some of the things that we experienced. I've worked in education for 20 plus years, so being personalized is not a new concept. It's actually something that education was very focused on, although it doesn't always quite work. I'm a patient ambassador for Heart UK as well as for FH Europe Foundation, but only took this role on much later. So my kind of story started, I'm originally from South Africa, moved to the UK 23 years ago. So I've experienced both countries and the good and the bad of being involved with kind of research. And one of the biggest things is I'm a patient that lives with a very rare genetic condition called homozygous FH. So I've spent a lot of time probably in medical rooms and speaking to researchers. So my view on precision medicine is that it's amazing to think how far we've come. And I wish I'd met Sonia previously, because unfortunately, even in today's kind of research, there's still quite a big thing about trying to fit a person into a one-size-fits-all situation. And the advantages of individualized care is amazing if you think of where we can take it, but the best kind of outcome for it will depend on the implementation, and it needs to serve the benefit of all, not just kind of one situation, but equity in a longer term outcome. So the kind of process we went through, I was diagnosed when I was 3.5 years old. My cholesterol level was 27. We lived in a very small mining community. We were sent to a hospital that was quite a distance away, where there was the lipid specialist that was needed. A few years ago, it changed and people understand FH and the genetic condition a bit better. But in that time, it was quite grim. The diagnosis that my mother was given was that I wouldn't see 11. I'm happy to say that obviously, that wasn't quite the case, but it was really tricky to not just access the specialist, but to understand how it will impact on a life when actually there wasn't a lot known about it. The clinic and the specialist where we were sent to was very coincidentally and happily part of a research group in the hospital. And that made us extremely lucky in the fact that we had expertise we could draw on. However, if you think the travel would take us 5 or 6 hours to get to the hospital, then spend the day there, and sometimes it was for a simple thing like answering 10 questions or having a quick blood test, that's a lot to put on individuals. The lack of information was incredible at that time. Not only was my mum told of this rare condition and the diagnosis being so grim, but you can imagine that she didn't have anything to tell the rest of the family because there was no information except for this one diagnosis. The amount of anxiety that was put on her was incredible for her to kind of deal with it. And the unknown, she didn't have a person she can phone up and say, what would this mean? Patient organizations back then was very rare, if any. You were supported by kind of clinicians, and we put a lot of faith into that. My mum is a great believer in giving back. She believes that you cannot find answers if you're not part of the solution. So as far as the research goes, she was all in. Any type of research that came around, she was happy for us to engage. This is not the case for all individuals, not all patients, for a variety of concerns. They don't know how to get involved. They don't know, they feel overwhelmed by the whole diagnosis and not understanding genetics and genomes and how all these things work. So I think I would, harp on the fact that education is a big, big part of making sure that you get patients involved. Having that contact with them, as Sonia said, having that open door of they can come and ask you a question, and no question is, irrelevant. Every question is important. Understanding people's culture and the language that they come from, that would be so different depending on which country you're in or which area of research you work in. We found research projects are not always very well explained. Sometimes it's because of a lack of understanding from a patient's point of view. And also in that moment, you don't process things quite the same. But the patients and carers, the biggest things they want to know is what is the benefit of going part of this project? What are the risks that are involved? What happens if the answers aren't positive? Because as we know, not everything has a positive outcome. Sometimes you do research because you think it's going to go one way and you actually find out, no, actually it's going a different way. But that is not very often fed back to the patients or the people involved in the research. And so they become fatigued. They don't want to be part of it because actually they kind of are supposed to a certain extent feel used. They've done all of this, but they've not had any information about how is it going, good or bad, it doesn't matter. The plans, especially for rare conditions, quite often they are trying to fit them all into one size fits all. We know from your research and your study that it doesn't work that way. A teenage girl compared to a man in his 30s are very different things. And depending on your focus for the research, I think it needs to be taken in consideration when you are looking at who you are choosing for kind of research. I absolutely understand the need that, for cheaper and better access and global treatment, that is the important part for everybody. But especially with rare disorders, the community, you need to be aware of the individuals, their access to treatment, the impact that the condition might have on their life, and how this will translate into society, and the impact and the burden, not just for the individual, but the wider family and the communities, and what that would look like during kind of a research project. So some of the things that have worked well. So these are the ones that we've come across that I can honestly say have made a bigger impact. We had individuals who were genuinely interested in the person, more than just the problem and the condition. They researched, they encouraged meetings, they wanted to have discussions. They opened up so that we could share knowledge and understanding so that they could gauge where we were, but also so that we can kind of have an idea of where they wanted to take this. We had that support beyond just the medical trial, you know, that Sonia spoke about having an open door, the social support for a telephone number where you can phone somebody and say, I've got a question about this, or can you just clarify this? Someone who was named as a community contact, that always seemed to work really, really well, because they understood where people were coming from and they were local and they were trusted. Trust is a big thing that in every research project, I think is important to build on. This has also worked where they've taken time to engage the community patient organizations. Now, you know, but previously, as I say, the patient organizations weren't as freely available, I suppose, as they are today, although they're still lacking in some areas. But they help them to understand what are the impacts, what are the outside impacts, you know, why get people enrolled, how to engage them, having a focus on a support person in the meetings, maybe to help navigate cultural backgrounds. Having that kind of bridge between the two was a really positive impact in some of the areas that we kind of worked on. Some of the challenges, and a lot of these things have already been mentioned, you know, you cannot just randomly choose patients for a survey. Sometimes it's useful, but it doesn't always work. So trying to focus, especially if you want to focus on the outcomes for a specific condition, the design process with an outcome focused on improving patient-centered outcomes for an individual condition or for a community need needs to include those patients or that community, and not just a random group of people. This will be different. European countries, African countries, every country will be different, but even smaller than that within African countries or European countries, it will be different. On the ground, it will be different because of different communities. You need to identify the right people, and this is crucial, I feel, for any successful outcomes. In saying that, that is tricky when it's a rare condition and you only have a few hundred people maybe across the world, but you know, technology has come so far where you can have you know, wearable technology, you can have Zoom calls like this, you can connect a lot easier than maybe 15, 20 years ago. Some of the other kind of challenges that we're looking at is the lack of communication from the research team. As I say, we've been involved with research teams a lot, and not just the progress of where they're heading to, but making sure that, you know, the good or the bad, it doesn't matter. The knowing is always better than wondering. If you have trialed a new medication and it works, fantastic. If it hasn't worked for whatever reason, then share that as well, because we do want to have that hope of there's going to be something that fixes it, but we're also realistic about where we are and what we can do. So one of the other kind of challenges has been the lack of access. If it's a project that needs regular contact with medical staff, you know, if you have a research team in a big city, that's great, but what about the outlying communities? What about the urban areas? This is really tricky for people who might have to take time off and travel. Not everybody has insurance, not everybody can afford to take time off. You know, people are going to school and education, all of these things are impacted. The cost of it is impacted, as we know, you know, especially when it's something as simple as you need to answer a few questions or have a quick blood test. Is there a different way that it can be done? You know, can you use somebody local who can help? Over the years, and I know it's generalizing, but we found that quite often research is done in a small bubble and not necessarily collaborating with somebody local makes it so much more difficult for you to get the information. I know, for instance, Heart and Stroke in Cape Town has a van that goes into rural communities to help them do tests. I think in Kenya, they have a very similar situation, and Korean Island has a similar thing as well. It is a problem, but I think it's something that can be overcome through true collaboration. I think it's really important to have empathy and understanding about where these patients are coming from, what is their lived experience. You know, we've spent our life being told that the experts know everything, and they do. They know everything about the condition. What they don't know about is how it looks on a day-to-day basis. What is the biggest priority for you in that time? You know, if you ask my mum, her priority was to get me better. What she didn't do was look after her own, because it's a genetic condition. She had a similar condition. You know, in that space, going for a blood test might not be the first thing you think of. It might be work because you can't afford not to be there. It might be school because you can't afford to have more time off. It might be other family needs. So you need to kind of focus on health, yes, but also how the world doesn't always work that way, and understanding background and trying to understand where they're coming from will help engage and empower patients in this kind of journey with you. Sorry, I'm really flying through this because I'm aware that we're kind of tight on time. Some of the key issues and priorities that I have found, and that FH Europe tries to kind of advocate for as well, is patient engagement in research. It is crucial for ensuring studies are addressing the needs and priorities for the patients themselves. It helps you to focus your research. What is it that you want to get out of it? It will enhance the quality and the relevance of research. You know, this is a very important commodity that you have. If used appropriately, it can give you so many answers. When patients are actively participating in research processes, they not only provide this valuable insight and perspective that can help you improve your design and implementation and how you get information, but it also improves the compliance and retention to treatment and to access, because they feel a sense of ownership and empowerment in their own care, but also as a community and wanting to give back to that. We have spent years being conditioned to accept that we are told by a specialist and you have to accept what they have told. And yes, they've studied and they've focused on genetics and how these things all kind of work in together. But you need, we need to kind of be able to help the patients also take a responsibility for their own care. If you do that, they will feel empowered. They need to learn how can they check information. They need to understand the processes, what is happening. So it is not just done to them, but actually they can improve the whole cycle of the healthcare society as a whole, and impact on that precision medication through the fact that they engage better, they help each other, they disseminate between themselves information, working together in such a clearer way. Will have such a big impact on pretty much everything. So kind of some of my final thoughts, just something for the research community to consider, but also for patient organizations to keep in mind is, in precision medicine, we have a unique and non-modifiable elements like the genetic makeup of somebody, but we also have those modifiable factors, i.e. behavior, that's in turn influenced by culture, political situations, stress, pollution, health policies. And we need to focus on prevention, in order to minimize that burden on the wider societies. But the only way we can do that is to make sure that actually we are looking at specifically what it is that we need to change. And the only way you can do that is to have that whole perspective, not just kind of one strand of things that you're looking at. We need to focus on ensuring that we get everyone around the table to work in true collaboration, transparency of information, making sure that we're all sitting together and actually having these discussions will have a major impact on how you move things forward, rather than having to wait for this little pod to do something before this pod does something. and collaborating with everybody, whether you are working in one country in Africa or across Europe. I think it's so powerful now that you have those access that it'll make such a big difference. We need an agreed level of minimal understanding of the concepts and processes. We're all aware that everybody comes to the table with different levels of understanding. And the only way we can change that is through education. Educating patients on what does a clinical trial look like? What are the processes? Why are you giving permission for certain things? What is the different stakeholders that will be involved? What can you expect out of it? But also what are the things that are expected of us? Being that critical friend, being feeling empowered that we can give you the answers and not just what you want to hear will help. Any of this can only be done, as I say, through education, shared information, making sure that the processes and things are clear and understood, recognizing the strengths that everybody brings to the table, consent and what that means. Informed consent is probably the most powerful thing in order for transparency. Most patients, I think, if you speak to them about consent, they don't have a problem with you using their data and information, but they want to know how and why. It's not just being collected for no apparent reason. There's an actual cause or a purpose for it. And last but definitely not least, we need to make sure that it is true multi-stakeholder collaboration, making sure that absolutely everybody that can be involved is being brought into the conversation, whether that's a carer, whether that's a patient organization, whether that's a clinician, but everybody is sitting at the table at the same level rather than a little bit here and a little bit there and a bit of a patchwork. So that's a very quick kind of overview of some of the experience that I've had in research, and I'm happy for anybody, if anybody has any questions. I'm hoping I've made up some time for Maria, because I think otherwise we'll run out of time.
Thank you, Elsie. I think we need to postpone the question at the end. Thank you very much.
No worries.
Don't worry. Then I think we can sum up your complete presentation that we need to ensure the clinical trials designs are patient-friendly, accessible, and we need to include all the kind of populations. Now I would like to give the floor to Franklin Mtei, that is the patient advocate and Inspire to Life organization. Franklin, the floor is yours.
Hello.
Hello, you are not in presentation mode.
I'm trying to share my presentation. Can you see it now?
Yes, I can see, but it is not in presentation mode, but we can see it. It's okay. Okay, now, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Franklin Mtei. I'm a global patient advocate with Inspire to Live. I'm the founder of the Tanzanian Cancer Society. So my presentation today basically had all the information that most people already know. So for the sake of time, I'll have to go straight to the unique points of my presentation. This is my personal Tanzanian experience, but as my colleague at Inspire to Live, Eltjo, explained that we are global patient advocates, we have chosen to become the patient's voice in cancer. So our role of being in that role is that we aim at trying to provide the best services for the cancer patients everywhere we are and globally at large. And that's the reason why, as patient advocates, we are moving heaven and earth, trying to find all the necessary information, all the necessary technologies and connections that we can get for our people back home. So we are very much supercharged to try to find everything good that's going to cause positive changes in healthcare at large. So personal view is that I had my little brother who was diagnosed with cancer, and he was having chemotherapy. And I believed if I knew about personalized medicine back then, it could have been something that I really would have wanted to come in Tanzania. So we stopped doing chemotherapy, but he survives up to this time. He's cancer-free 7 years now. But as far as I understand, the importance of personalized medicine is that as a radiation therapist at Ocean Road for over 15 years, we have seen a lot of patients who don't get cured the same way that, or don't respond the same way that other people are responding. And some die of side effects, some die of chemotherapy side effects, and some even get more trouble during treatments that help other people. So with that being said, I would like to show you this famous picture right here that the doctor is trying to tell the patient that don't confuse me with your Google search with my 6 years of medical school. But the patient tells the doctor that don't confuse the 1 hour lecture you had on my condition with all the experience that I have with the disease. This, to me, showcases the power fight between the two. But it's only the old modeled doctors who don't want changes, who don't accept the fact that patients also are empowered, even their relatives are empowered because of the technology, and that they know what's the best thing for them, and probably even know more because they are experiencing what they are facing. So as a patient advocate, it's my duty to educate the both, that the doctors have to know that now the world has changed. It's very important that you have to listen and learn from the patient's perspectives. And at the same time, I am the one responsible to ensure that the patients know the right things at the right time, because there are different factors that would make it difficult for our kind of patients in Tanzania and other middle low income countries, because most of our patients are palliative patients. They are in pain, and basically they cannot really just confront the doctors this way, like telling a doctor, what do you think about this? Or why don't you do this? So those difficulties in expression, the things that as a patient advocate, what we do is we try to discard some misinformation by trying to find the right ways of mobilizing the patients' advocacy groups, patient support groups, and we educate them on their rights and what they have to expect from clinical researchers and trials, and even the communication with doctors as well. But such as it is so bad situation that we have very few doctors, and the referral system is fragmented, and we have few or no advocates. So when a patient goes through all these barriers and reach a point that they talk to a doctor or a researcher or something, it's very difficult for them to think. I mean, they take it like it's an opportunity that's very rare, so they are lucky. And they trust the doctors. This is culturally, because most people are illiterate and they're not so much educated. So we believe that the doctors are right in each and every way. So when you try to ask a question or suggest, basically the patients, the patients think that they are being disrespectful or they want to cause trouble. So they don't really participate the way they do. And that's when we patient advocates come in. So as far as patient engagement, we all know that. I'll just explain that, but I'll go through this slide very quickly because already these things are being said before. But the key points I would like everybody to understand and remind us during this discussion is that different populations have different side effects from the same treatment, and different medications work differently in different populations as well. So it's very important to customize the guidelines to the populations that we are, the patients, we are treating, even the researchers that we're doing. So things that will be much cost effective for LMIC is to reduce disparity in cancer care, and where you're treated and how you're treated doesn't have to have boundaries anymore. So as a patient advocate, I would like to remind the researchers that in this part of the world, we are very important part of the puzzle, that we need to be empowered and be included in your processes as much as you include the doctor, the patients, because most of our patients cannot even comprehend all the medical jargon or what the new medication or the new technology out there is. But us as patient advocates, if we are empowered, we have collaborations with people from outside the country, those who are much more experienced, like the Europeans and other developed countries. They have this, patient advocacy groups, even the fundings and exchange programs, and the kind of like sharing of information, so that if we are to promote a certain kind of service or innovation like this personalized medicine, we will know exactly what to do and how to do, so that we can even affect the policy changes. So I would like as well to display some recommendations that will show how exactly patient advocacy can do in your researches. According to this research, which was done in the National Cancer Institute in Cairo, it was shown that only 3% of information sources that patients get from the information about their diseases come from the healthcare team. This is exactly the case here in East Africa, that doctors usually don't have much time to explain the disease and what's not in with the patients. But rather, we see that in social media, 18% in internet and caregivers and other patients, they comprise over a half of what really the sources of information that these patients go to. So as patient advocates, what we really do and what can do in your researches is that we can create programs that would ensure that the social media platforms, the internet, the caregivers and other patients get the right information, because having missing over the 97% of information, patients go to these various sources. So in these sources, in our, like say in Tanzania, the language is Kiswahili. So, and most of information out there is in English. So what we could do as patient advocates, and that's what I've been doing, I've been translating some informations and share them on social media and internet, and we conduct some caregivers education, and we tell them about the innovations that are there and what they can do, the clinical trials, but we don't really see the clinical trials enough in East Africa. So when we are engaged, we are in the position to try to promote these services, like I said before. We can talk to the government, we can talk to officials, we can create campaigns, and we can also cause a lot of positive positive outcomes that we are all looking for. So I would like to urge your organization and all the stakeholders that not only do you need the patients by themselves to be included, but also there are people around who can mobilize these patients more effectively and remind them each step of the way, like a brother from Nigeria insisted on getting the consent each and every time that a patient feels like they can proceed with the procedures or not. So my call for researchers is that they all have to be realistic, and they should know that they are dealing with people from different backgrounds, and the way we learn is different. So the Afrocentric researches and interventions need to be done, because if you want to talk to an African, you just have to find the ways to talk to them, and that's through patient advocates and patient advocacy groups. That's why I'm insisting on empowering the both worlds, so that what you're doing becomes much more easier. So what we do, this was my presentation from the last time with e-cancer. So, but as for today, all I'm trying to say is that we all would like all these technologies to come in our areas, but we really need to be involved from the very first steps, so that we can ensure that the services that we're about to provide, the research that we want to conduct are much more fruitful and successful. So with that being said, I think I should end up there.
Thank you very much, Frankie, for this interesting presentation. I think we have to give the floor to Helena. Sorry because we have no time at the moment to offer you the possibility.
Thank you, everyone. I'm Helena Harnik, and I'm the Executive Director of the Farm Testing to Targeted Treatments Program. I was shortening my presentation as we were going because I see that we're pretty much out of time, so I'll try to be brief. And if anyone would like to follow up with me separately, I'm really happy to do a follow-up call. But I thank you, first of all, for all the presenters for such inspiring and informative presentations. What I'm hoping to doing with the Farm Testing to Targeted Treatments program is to take a more of a macro approach to this. I'd like to tell you about our program, which is a multi-stakeholder global program to improve access to precision medicine for the patients who could benefit from it, so that ultimately we are improving patient outcomes. And we are really trying to take a slightly different perspective, yes, collaborating with patients, but to take an ecosystem approach. And I'll tell you a little bit more about what that means. You can see the membership here, but you can see already that it's a partnership between patient organizations and industry and also healthcare professionals. And we have a wider community of practice as well. I had heard that there are some Nigerians on the line today, and Project Pink Blue, which you might know is one of the newest members that have joined as well. So we're really happy to be increasing our presence in the African continent as well. So to explain to you what FT3 does in our mission, so what we aim to do is to act as an accelerator and connector for everything, all initiatives, all activities happening around precision medicine so that we can have the best patient outcomes. And what we are trying to do is to use our global multi-stakeholder network to be able to identify what are some common challenges that are being experienced. We know that in different countries, the access to precision medicine is unique, just as the health systems are unique. But we are often hearing that there are some challenges that are kind of universal in different places. And we are trying to identify good practices and learnings and to see what we can do to make them replicable. And that was mentioned in an earlier presentation as well. So I was taking some notes there. And then if we see that's something that's working, then we try to bubble it up. If we identify a need and we're not able to find a solution, then we'll actually use this this group of people that we have to co-create solutions. So everything you see here is being co-created by this community. It's not at all decided by me. I wanted to just quickly show you the strategy that we have developed, not to explain this to you in detail, but just to illustrate. I mean, this in itself was a bit of a collaborative work to identify where do the members feel we need to focus to be able to move the needle when it comes to access to personalized healthcare approaches. And just at a very high level, there were three main areas of needs that were identified. First was to see what is it that we can do to improve access to precision medicine at the health system level. This, of course, includes access and reimbursement challenges and things like that. But I was interested, it was mentioned earlier as well, that we also need to enable better understanding between different stakeholders and how they are looking at this topic and their expectations when it comes to precision medicine. So that's something that is really important for us. And then the second goal area is around how can we make precision medicine accessible at the care level? So you might have access at the system level, but unless the patient is aware, unless the healthcare professional has the genomic confidence, unless they're able to have that balanced conversation around these issues together, then we will not be able to really have impact. So this was also highlighted as well. I'm moving quickly. I'm just aware of the time. So what we have done with our community is we have developed resources and tools for champions of precision medicine. So this could be patient advocates, it could be healthcare professionals, it could be really anyone who is really looking to move the needle in terms of access in their own country and their condition area. And what we have done is to use the best practices that we have identified through lots of mappings and things like that to develop, let's say, educational resources that are ready to be adapted to the local context. We have advocacy resources, something we call the country and condition cards, which is a framework to help map out the availability of precision medicine in a given country or condition, and to also compare them between countries. We are also experimenting with visualizations of the patient pathway in a way that will also highlight the experience of the patient and what are the kinds of things that are important for them, and the effect on quality of life and other dimensions like that. So there's a lot going on. And I wanted to highlight just one example. There were more, but I've shortened it to one example now, which is the country pilot program. And as a global program, something that was important for our members to do was to see what is it that we can really do to move the needle at the local level. And so this is a program that we have started last year and we're expanding this year. And the idea is to recreate the FT3 approach at the country level, to be able to share learnings and best practices, and actually in applying the learnings that we have locally to be able to learn more and then share that back with the community. And we're trying to run these programs in parallel as well, so that each of the countries can support each other. And one example I have that we have been working on is in Hungary, which is a country that actually has reimbursement of biomarker testing for lung cancer patients, but it's a country where uptake of that is very challenging. And we were working on this hypothesis that if we were able to inform the patient of the specific information needs that the healthcare professionals had identified, then we would be able to improve biomarker testing rates and therefore access. So we worked with a multi-stakeholder team, including the healthcare community, which is a real success factor in my opinion. And this is the kind of thing that we did in multi-stakeholder working groups. So we were, this is something that we developed actually inspired by another resource from Longevity in the US, which we call the Access Barrier Cause Effect Canvas. And the idea is that you're mapping out the patient pathway, but also mapping out the patient experience, and also at different steps of the patient pathway, what are the key barriers and possible solutions that you can identify. And so we did this in our pilot because we were interested in education. We were doing this from an information point of view. And we did this in this multi-stakeholder working group. And what was quite interesting was we realized things that people did not know before. So for example, the healthcare professionals were telling us at the suspected disease stage that patients in Hungary are not aware of how medicine has moved on. And they are they kind of lose hope, and they're not even interested in getting tested because they just assume that it's going to lead to chemotherapy, and they don't realize that there are other options open for them. So the conclusions will be different in different countries and different conditions, of course, but the approach is, I think, quite an interesting one. And then based on this, what we did was we developed fit-for-purpose educational resources that were actually inspired by the global resources we had developed, but we had really made them specific to Hungary. And then we partnered with healthcare professionals, and actually through the Young Oncopulmonologists Association to be able to bring that to them. The idea was that they would be more receptive to this kind of information, and the feedback initially has been very positive. So that's an example of what we have done. We have done another pilot in Spain, but it's a very different pilot. So this is a country that is a decentralized system. And here the challenge was more to be able to map the availability of precision medicine and compare them from region to region. And for next year, we're exploring pilots in other countries, including South Africa and Nigeria, but also some countries, including Morocco and Japan and the Philippines. So you can see that there are a lot of different interesting projects coming our way. So I will skip Spain for now, but perhaps we can share the slides with you. And again, if you're interested in getting involved or learning more, you're welcome to contact me. And there are different ways that you can get involved in FT3, and I'd be really interested in following up with the other panelists as well. But I hope that was an informative yet short presentation. And again, very happy to be here.
Thank you very much, Helena. I'm sorry for the time. If you have time for one question, otherwise, I think we can give the opportunity to the participant to send me the question, and I can address you, every of the speaker, the question if you want. Okay, then. Really, thank you very much for your participation, and it has been a very, very interesting webinar, and I hope we can continue with our series of webinars to improve the patient engagement. Thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you for.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you,
Greetings
guys.
from Tanzania. Bye-bye.